Hey there. So, a little bit ago, we made a video talking a little bit about the mindset behind being a kind of solo guitar player at church or in the context of a church band. So, that video was mainly focused on kind of just the mindset of it, not so much the actual playing. Depending on when it was edited and how it kind of turned out, there might have been a little bit of playing, there might have not been. I'm shooting this pretty much like right after, so keep that in mind. But in this video, I want to kind of go a little bit more on the detail tone wise and what's going on when I am setting up the quad cortex for these types of things. These types of things being the kind of mindset behind setting up a patch, what am I looking to do, and things like that. So we are going to dive right into this scene over here. Hopefully you can see the quad cortex right there and my pretty little mug. So just give myself some volume so I can hear what I am doing. So basically, I want to go through when I am setting up the quad cortex and essentially kind of, again, in the video, we talk a little bit about how I'm a solo guitar player. So what am I thinking about when I kind of design a patch around this? So basically, I'll keep Cortex control here on the screen for you. Quad Cortex is down here, obviously. But I'll just have you see Cortex control because it's the same thing as the actual quad cortex itself. But basically, my kind of thought process is I'm trying to fill up the space that two guitar players would normally do, keeping in mind that I have a bass player, keeping in mind that I have a keys player, and even a sax player. Just keeping those things front and center in my mind. So I'm not like accidentally taking up too much space. So I start that off here with my clean channel. And these clean is not going to be like sparkling, super clean because you do need to have a little bit of kind of dirt in there. So this sounding like this. Real quick, I am using the Epiphone Wildcat. It's been my kind of go-to guitar recently. Been really loving the P90s on it. They sound really nice and clear, so really like that. And in terms of amp, this will not be changing between the scenes. It is a capture of a Lone Star from Mesa Boogie in a kind of lower gain setting. This is from the Mateo Sasato X or Mateo Sasato pack from Neural DSP that I have. They're supposed to put in the quad cortex soon, but they haven't yet. So I just kind of wanted to do that. All of this will be down below in the link for the Cortex Cloud. So if you want to download it, it's going to be down there. So basically clean. When I'm in this purely clean setting, I try to not be too much in the bridge pickup just because it's a little jangly. Right? So I usually try to keep that in the middle position when I'm in this particular, in the two kind of clean sections, just to kind of give it a more rounded body. Now, what I would use this clean for, it's if I'm just starting off a song and let's say there's like this little lead line that I might do with a piano or something. Something like that, right? So I keep that one in mind more so I want to do the line, but I want to kind of be out of the way, right? I'm maybe not the focus in that particular part. And if I want to be even more kind of in the background, I'll switch to the neck pickup. So that's philosophy number one. Kind of like know your place and what you should be doing in the song. We don't always have to be like having heaps of effects or heaps of drive or things like that. Especially if you're alone, you want to be kind of a more chameleon. And like we discussed in the previous video, you're not playing lead or rhythm, so you're playing whatever the song really needs at that moment. I can even do this with a more, maybe kind of more of a rhythm driving section. So that's kind of philosophy number one. The clean plus is essentially this same concept, like maybe like an intro or kind of slightly cleaner, but I'm adding in the additional delays and reverbs, a little bit of drive, and a little bit amount of modulation. So this is where this is kind of like if you're doing an intro, but you are kind of the one doing the intro, if that makes sense. So if I were to be doing that same intro, but it's more the guitar doing it alone. And if I were to do kind of a bigger chord. And again, that's the middle position. So if I go to the bridge, I can get a little bit more gain out, a little bit more kind of piercing, and kind of cut through the mix a little bit. So that is the kind of tip number one, like I mentioned, is that know the place of where you're supposed to be, the place where you are doing your job, you're occupying your space, you're maybe not getting in the way of like what the other instruments are doing. Even if you're doing like what's it called, the unison, you want to kind of keep your place on where the guitar is supposed to be in that kind of mid range, not being too high, not being too low. Something that I see a lot of guitarists do is that if the lead line of the song is something like something like that, right? I'm just using a bunch of triads just kind of off the top of my head. That might be if you're like a lone guitarist. Usually in the record, like they'll have another guitarist just like doing like big chords in the background to kind of cover you. And if you don't have that, you can still do that line, but just keep in mind you might have to kind of compensate with some wet effects, maybe an octavier, or just doing the same thing an octave down. In this case, I'm going to try how it sounds with the octavier. So I'm going to give it, let's say, a 35 in the octave and the sub another 35. So there you can see, even if I were to be playing alone, I'm looking to occupy a little bit more space because I'm playing alone, and I might need to fill out a bit more space in the mix, a bit more kind of, so it doesn't feel like there's only just one guitar, if that makes sense. Which brings me to point number two. Always prioritize the necessity of the song over even the original arrangement. What I mean by this is if we have a song and there's a lead line where it's something like this. Something like that. And in the background, we have a guitar kind of driving. Something like that. Obviously, kind of pick and choose what you would prefer to be doing. But me personally, I would sacrifice the melody or the kind of lead line unless it's super important. We can have the keys player do it or something like that because it's more of a driving section. And we really want to do justice to, the song and your audience, and kind of make sure that the essence of the song is the same, even if the actual arrangement might be a little bit different. All right, so that brings us over to the more kind of drivey section, the more kind of fun part of it. So basically, I have um, condensed this into a drive and a drive plus section. They are more or less the same, just with slight differences here and there with the effects and things like that. Obviously, having more drive between them. So my first drive section, this is where this could be a part of like a second verse, maybe that kind of, you think about a song structure where it's like that initial first chorus, it might be softer, and then at that first verse, it kind of picks up. This is probably where I'll be depending on the song. So this is kind of like the, once we enter drive section, this is probably the lowest that I'll go. So if you'll notice, even when I put it down, you'll notice that the reverb's got a little bit shorter. There is less delay. And if we go into the actual parameters, you'll see decay 80, mix 40, and then drive will be 20, 58. Because this might be a more of a driving section where I can maybe be something like that. So we want to make sure that when we are driving, we're not like oversaturating with effects and things like that, because it can get really muddy. And then you start occupying too much space. And then instead of having the guitar nice and defined in the mix, you could be making it where there's just this kind of wall of sound for the guitar. And it's not really, you're not really able to discern what the guitarist is doing. And this can be for chords. Right? So that's kind of where we're coming from. And then the evolution of that is quite a bit more gain, because this is more, we're at big chorus time. We are super hype in the song. This is the kind of probably as big as it'll go, or as big, barring the lead section, the kind of big lead section. So this is kind of where we bring back a quite a bit of reverb. We add the another delay, because again, we're kind of looking to grow. So when you're setting up, whether it be on a quad Cortex or your analog pedal board or your other all-in-one of choice, we're looking to kind of have stages of growth and growth and growth. And then we go up, and then we can go down depending on the necessities of the song. I will point out, this is a kind of default patch where I base songs out of. So if I don't know the song very well and I didn't prepare ahead of time, I'll probably just live here and just kind of, depending on the needs of the song, do that. But if I do have time, I'll set up more of a song patch. Again, I have a couple song patches in the link below for the Cortex Cloud. So here in Drive Plus, we are at pretty much, like I mentioned, as big as we're going to go. So we let it decay. There's a lot of reverb and delay. So this is pretty big. Something like this, you probably wouldn't want to be doing like a lot of chugging. You can, but it's just going to lose a little bit of that integrity. So depending on the needs of the song, you might want to dial back the effects if there's like this big kind of driving chugging section, which this patch can sort of maybe accommodate. But basically the philosophy there is, with the drive sections, you want to be big and kind of present in the mix, kind of make sure that the guitar is heard type of thing, but you want to keep it clear. You want to keep it discernible of what you're actually playing. So with this, I could realistically play big chords and it's not going to be a problem for me, because you can still make you can still see what the guitar, or hear what the guitar is playing. So even if I play big chords like this, So you're almost at lead territory by that point. And if we do kind of smaller, kind of third inversion, second inversion triads, second position triads rather, you can still have it sound pretty big. And even something like a 9 chord, you can still make out the note. So that's what you're looking to do when it comes time to setting up your drives. You want to make sure that, first of all, you usually need less drive than what you think you might need. But you want to make it enough where, you know, it sounds nice and full and kind of defined still. So you don't want to be like overly saturated. So if I were to do an example of that, let's say, yeah, let's just take this overdrive and push it up to 10. So something like a lead line, that's fantastic. But something like a big chord, you might be getting too gainy. Right? So you always want to be mindful of, you know, that gain structure. I'm gonna put this back here real quick. I do not know where this was. I don't know. Let's say that it was there. All right, so that brings us back to that brings us to finally like a bigger kind of lead section. So you want to approach these things with, again, it depends on the song, depends on the context of where you are at, depends on the context of where the rest of the band is at, depends on a whole lot of things that not all of them might be in your control. But at least the way I set it up is I have like a pretty very good amount of gain. Usually with lead, I'll go into the amp, for example, and just give it like a hair more volume, just to kind of cut through a little bit, because obviously you're with the sound guy. He's going to put your guitar probably, which is what most people do. They'll put like a particular instrument like very static, kind of cap it out. So you want to, depending on your relationship with the sound guy, you might want to add a little bit of extra signal yourself, depending on, again, the gain structure of where you are at. But here, you'll notice that we did actually add quite a healthy amount of the octave and the sub, because again, if we're doing a lead, you know, we want to kind of take up a lot of space, and we have big reverbs, big delays, because we really want it to sound like kind of huge when that guitar comes in. So you want to be careful with these types of sound, where if you notice at the end, I went down on the neck on purpose over here. So because we have that sub guitar in there, you want to be mindful. If I'm doing like a big chord, like that's probably not going to sound so great. It's going to sound very kind of muddy, and, you know, in isolation, you might think like, oh, that sounds great. But in the context of a mix, it more than likely is just going to muddy up things. You can also use these kind of more lead section parts with kind of more octave chords. So that can sound great because it's just two notes and you're adding the sub and the harmonic. And depending on, again, the needs, if you want it to really sound like 2 or 3 guitars, you can really bump up these effects really high. But then again, if you put a lot of sub in there, if you do like a big chord, it's just gonna sound very muddy very quickly. And then I don't know why I'm putting this back. I'm not gonna save this. And then what I always suggest, when you're kind of preparing this type of stuff, always have a section where you don't have any delays, or rather any reverb. And maybe just a delay or very small delays. And this one is kind of more like I'm using it more like an effect where I'm just having the delays kind of fight each other. Right. And that is done. I usually leave the feedback at 50% anyway, but I might actually kind of give it just a little bit more so you can hear that a little bit better. Right. So the kind of point of this is, so when you're doing a section, so that's a way where me as a guitar player, I can kind of, again, trying to fill space as much as I can without being too in the way. So I really want to lean on my effects to kind of help me out here because I'm playing alone, but I don't want to sacrifice the essence of the arrangement or the essence of the song. And sometimes it just sounds better without any reverb, right? So we're tempted to think, oh, I'm playing alone, let me just drench it in reverb. But that could be working against you, especially like we mentioned in the video prior. If the room has a lot of reverb, that's totally working against you. So always be mindful of that. And just, in general, just take your time, really understand what's going on in the band, really listen to what the other people are playing, because if you have a keys player and they have really sophisticated software that they can do a lot of pads and a lot of pianos and a lot of synths, they're probably taking up a lot of the space that you might not feel the need, or you might not need to occupy that much space in the mix. Because again, you have a bass player, you have a keys player. In my case, I sometimes have a sax player, so I won't even practice lead lines sometimes because we'll just have the sax do it, unless it's very imperative that the guitar player do that part, right? So just really focus on leaning on your other bandmates when you need that more support. And then I'm not going to talk about the swell because who doesn't know what a swell is if you're playing guitar? But that is more or less it when it comes time to, setting up your tone for worship and being kind of like a lone gun guitar player. At least that's how I approach it. So you don't necessarily have to copy what I do. I do encourage you to download that patch down below, edit it on your style, and if you make a video about it, make a post about it, go ahead and tag me in my Instagram, in my YouTube, my Facebook. I have all the platforms, so you feel free to tag me with anything that you kind of create with this patch. All right, so there you have it. That's my way of approaching kind of being a solo guitar player in this kind of church community band. This is not super specific to church. This can cover a wide variety of genres because these are more kind of universal concepts, or at least I think they're universal concepts on, just kind of finding your place inside the band, whether that be worship music, rock music, pop music. These concepts are going to kind of assist you in any way, depending on the band that you're in. Like I mentioned, do download the links below for the Cortex Cloud. Tag me in anything that you do. And just to kind of sum everything up, always be mindful to serve the song, listen to what other people are playing, and listen to what the arrangement needs at that moment or the essentials of the arrangement. So keep those three things in mind whenever you're setting up your tone or things like that. But that's going to do it for me. Always be sure to like and follow and leave your comments down below. I love reading them. So that's it for me. See you next time.